Hi and welcome to the latest in the Old Man Rambling, and might actually be the last one. I'm not really sure there's much else to say after this one, but we've been winding our merry way up to the point where I really got into endgame raiding and hard mode raiding, which basically took over other hobbies. I wouldn't say took over my life, because work always comes higher priority of that. So what I'm going to do in this video is to explain a few things in terms of what I've been doing through World of Warcraft, what it was that was so appealing about the raiding in particular, but also sort of what the various downsides to it are that have now built up to the point where I'm not going to be doing mythic raiding for Battle for Azeroth, so I'm going to be looking for a group where I can do heroic raiding only, as well as mythic plus dungeons for BFA. So, in terms of, obviously raiding has changed a lot from vanilla. In vanilla, even semi-serious guilds put a lot of time into the raiding. There was an awful lot of time went into it. To the point where there was a point where I was raiding 8 times a week. And you think to yourself, oh, there's only 7 days in a week. Yes, I used to raid every evening and Sunday afternoon. Now, I wasn't in an ultra-hardcore group. Not all of these raids were compulsory, but I enjoyed it to the point where I would do them. Some of them I organised as well. So a Sunday afternoon Zul'Gurub run, for example, I used to organise and run that. As well as a couple of the other ones. And because at the time it was really new, and what was really good about it, and as I say, as soon as I really got into it, why Warhammer got kicked in the head, was because I've said before, it was there all the time. You know, it was something I could come home from work when I'd finished doing whatever, I could come online and there was stuff to do immediately. So it was like the instant gratification thing. Even though the raiding itself had to be prepared for, and there was a lot of wiping before you would kill the tougher bosses. TBC didn't really change that a great deal. You didn't actually raid as much. It wasn't. It certainly wasn't. And I was raiding in better guilds in TBC, and it wasn't quite the 7 days a week, but it was certainly 5 days a week to be able to raid and keep ahead, keep on top of everything. You know, and we did in TBC. I did actually keep on top of everything. Kill Jade, well not kill Jade, and stuffed him back in his hole. You know, before the pre-patch came out, a few weeks before the pre-patch came out. But then what happened, and that was at that time I was in the most progress guild I was ever going to be in. In Wrath of the Lich King, that came out. Now, at the time, I did actually do the Wrath beta, but I didn't like do a lot of stuff on forums. I used to, you know, report things. There was actually something that's now in the BFA beta, or had been, which is a bug reporting tool, and it used to ask you. There was a lot of in-game feedback required in the Wrath beta. I remember it used to ask you whenever you did a quest, it was like, "Oh, did you enjoy this quest? Was anything wrong with it?" Blah blah blah. Something that the past few betas haven't really done, but then they brought it back for BFA. So I did do the beta, and I was in relatively early on, and spent a lot of time in there. But I didn't spend a lot of time reading about what was coming up. I just experienced it for myself in the beta, and then joined. Because what I'm going to say next is going to make me sound really stupid. Maybe it was, but you know, I didn't know any better. So what happened was Wrath opened up. Now, as with every expansion up to but not including BFA, I have had to fit leveling around work, and the times it's come out has not always been easy times at work either. So, you know, I've never been able to level up in like a day or two. Some people would. But then a lot of people in my guild are in the same boat as well. So, when I eventually got to level 80, it was at round about the time that the majority got to level 80. The night before, there were others, you know, who decided to go into Nax, because the raids that were open up, there was Naxxramas version 2, which turned out to be a much weaker version of the one that was there for vanilla. Malagos's Lair, where it was just one boss, Malagos, and then Obsidian Sanctum, where really it was the same sort of thing, wasn't it? You had the mini bosses, but it basically was, you know, Sartharian. That was it. So, you know, one main raid and a couple of dragon raids. So what the group who'd already got to level 80 did, as a much smaller group, Because the other thing that was introduced in Wrath was 25-man and 10-man raiding. So basically in vanilla, raiding was 40-man, and then in TBC it went to 25-man. But you always had your half raids. So in vanilla, there were a couple of raids that were 20-man, like the half raids. And that was Zul'Gurub and Zulaman. No, not Zulaman, that was TBC, sorry. AQ20, the Ruins of Anchorage. And then in TBC, you had Zulaman, which was like a 10-man raid, and Karazhan, which is a 10-man raid. But then what happened in Wrath is they said, okay, we're going to actually do raids, and there's going to be a 25-man mode and a 10-man mode, with the 10-man mode being a bit easier. And each of them, so the 10-man didn't award such good gear, but, in terms of item level, or whatever, value of it, but there it was. So obviously we're going to do the 25-man, a serious guild. So they cleared one wing, probably the spider wing. That's always the first one you do, isn't it? Can't remember exactly now. And then the next night, when we're was enough of us to do a proper raid, we went in and cleared the rest of it. And I thought, okay, we just because remember, most of us in the guild remembered going through Naxx, and we hadn't cleared it. I was in a different guild at the time, but I was on the same server as this guild, and we hadn't actually killed every boss. In my particular guild, it was because they stopped raiding 2 months before TBC came out, because as soon as the date was announced, everyone just had the attitude of, oh, well, because they were just basically loot whores, or a lot of them were anyway, not all. And their attitude was, well, I'm not going to slog my guts out for another 2 months to get gear that I'm going to replace with quest greens. Not that they would have that early anyway, but it doesn't matter. That was the attitude. So basically, we had 2 months of no raiding. So we got no further than we had, and we only had a few more bosses to do. But anyway, the point is that we hadn't actually. I think there was one person in the guild who on another server had cleared it. The rest of us hadn't. So the idea that we blasted through this effectively in a night was just a bit pathetic. And then the rest of the week we went off and did, Sartharion and Malagos. And when we were doing Malagos, this is how bad it was. And that was the toughest boss. I was still, when we killed it, skilling up my polearm. I'd just got a polearm from a dungeon or something. And I was so blue. I was still skilling it up. I hadn't even done all the dungeons. I'd cleared all the raid bosses in Wrath at the time. I hadn't even done all the dungeons by this point. So what happened? They'd introduced the achievements thing that came in with the pre-patch, but it was a Wrath feature, and they had these new achievements which we used to now, where you do certain bosses in certain ways and give yourself a slightly tougher time of it, and you get a title. You got a mount as well, and back then, you didn't buy the speed of mount with just a flying trainer. The mount you got, the Black Proto Drake, was a 310% speed mount. Other mounts weren't, so the speed that a mount went was a property of the mount, not so much your riding skill, although there was riding skill as well. So, we got that ugliest sin, but it was fast. The Ashes of Alar from TBC was just as fast, but, I'd missed out on that. I remember almost winning. I'd only seen it drop once, and I rolled and I got like a 90-something, 97 I think it was. And I was there and it was like, oh, and everyone, and loads of rolls had gone. I thought, oh, I've won. And then a 99 came in, a late one from a bloody gnome, would you believe it? But anyway, never mind that. So this was, I got the 310 now. But that's all there was to do. It's like a week to clear all the bosses, and then spending a certain amount of time to do achievements, including, the 3D drakes, especially on 10-man. At least there was a bit of interest doing that on 10-man, because I had a weird hybrid spec, a combination of tank and enough ret to get the replenishment trait, which basically gave passive mana back to the mages. Well, everyone, but the mages were particularly keen on that. And so what I looked at this, not knowing any better, not knowing what was coming, and I just looked at the lay of the land, and I just saw, is this what raiding is now? First of all, you've got your 10 and your 25 man, so that even smaller groups can do the raids, so it's much more pug friendly, which was okay. I had no issues with that. But it's even got to the point where even the 25 man is not difficult. The difficulty was in doing the achievement, so doing it in a harder way. And I thought, this form of raiding is pathetic. It's not worth my while. The rewards are just not good enough. So I quit the game because at the time I just thought to myself, I don't even really want to. There wasn't anything else in the game that was particularly appealing other than the raiding. So I thought I'll just go off and do other things, which is what I did. So I quit the game completely. Now, of course, what happened then is Ulduar came out and it had a very different style of hard mode. Which, of course, I may well have enjoyed. And, of course, Ulduar, a lot of people regard it as the best raid. Not everyone has necessarily experienced all of them, but there's a good number of people regard it as their favourite raid of all time. And I missed out on that. I didn't know. I didn't even know about it when it happened because I completely removed myself from World of Warcraft. I went off and played Lord of the Rings Online, some Warhammer Online, blah, 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 blah. So then what happened, it was still sort of rat. It wasn't actually all that long later, right? A year later, maybe, I don't know. I suppose it must have been a little bit after a year. So ICC was just coming out. And basically what happened is my graphics card in the computer I had at the time, basically. So I had to get a new graphics card. Now at the time, I didn't have enough money to be able to get a good graphics card, which it was. So I had to get basically a cheap off-the-shelf graphics card from the local store and put that in. And what I found was, like, Lord of the Rings Online isn't terribly well optimized. So with a poor quality graphics card, it's not that great to play. You can sort of play it, but it's not that great. Warhammer Online became important, and that was the one I was playing the most because I actually loved it. Warhammer Online was fantastic because up until I played that, I thought PvP and MMOs was just bad. There was something fundamentally wrong with MMOs in terms of delivering good quality PvP because I didn't enjoy PvP in WoW. I thought it was pointless. I didn't enjoy it in Age of Conan. I didn't enjoy it in Lord of the Rings Online. But I did enjoy it in Warhammer Online. Thought it was fantastic. And I even joined a guild specifically to do PvP. And that's what we did. I did PvP. Like pretty much all the time. And yeah, it was great. But I couldn't play it. And it's not just that I couldn't play it in a group. I couldn't even move around the city. No chance. It couldn't cope with it. Again, another poorly optimized game. So what I found was, when I reinstalled WoW, I could play WoW on it. Because WoW has always been really well optimized. And I sort of had a sneaking suspicion it was. Because I remember when WoW first came out, Pentiums were very much the thing then. But I knew some people with 486s that ran it fine and raided fine. 40-man raid and all the rest of it. So WoW has always been good from that point of view. Big plus for it. And I suppose, you know, especially when it came out, because it came out round about the time when more people were getting broadband, but not everyone had broadband. So the idea that this thing could run well on not the best gaming machines and setups was probably a real plus for them. So anyway, I came back. But now, at the same time, a friend of mine was also coming back, and he was playing very casually with some friends of his. And he said, well, you join our guild. It was a Horde guild, so I had to create a Horde character. So I created a Death Knight first of all, because obviously they start at level 58 or whatever it is. No, 55, sorry. So a bit of a head start to get them leveled up to the point where I could do something. And then once I'd done that, I used to raid a bit on the Death Knight with them. Very casually, super casual, like proper scrub guild. And then I leveled up Paladin, a Horde Paladin. So, and that's what I did. But then, horror of horrors, before Ruby Sanctum came out, the whole computer, the motherboard went then. I think what really happened was, the case wasn't that brilliant. The circulation wasn't great in it. So I frequently used to just take the side off to keep it cool. Which is not a great idea because then you get a lot of dust in it. And I think something's shorted out. But anyway, that was the computer bugger. Now, if I couldn't, replace a graphics card, I certainly couldn't replace a computer at this point. So I left it. And then, not long after I got a new job as well. And that was a lot of hard work. And a lot of travelling. It was actually some distance away. It's a hell of a lot of travelling. And a lot of work. And because it was doing things that, was quite new in my experience at the time. And so I just left it. I just left it by the wayside. And then a bit later, I was getting some more money, and I just decided, let's get back into it. and I got a gaming computer again. I started playing a bit more of various things, but of course World of Warcraft. And I sort of came back to World of Warcraft towards the end of Fireland, so just in time for Dragonsoul. And I joined a guild. I didn't expect to get straight back into a decent raiding guild. I thought I'll just ease myself into the game, learn, because obviously lots of things had changed in the game. When I saw people in Stormwind and I looked at their health and mana pools, I just thought, whoa, my God, what the hell? The massive explosion in the stats. And so I thought I need to ease myself into it. But they, round about that time, you had some dungeons where you could get catch-up gear. And I was able to join a raiding guild. It wasn't a stunning raiding, it wasn't a high progress raiding guild. But it did heroic raiding, which at the time is what we'd call mythic now. So it did get the hardest modes completed. Not, quickly, but it did get them done in time. So I ended up joining them, as a Ret Paladin. And that was okay for a bit. And then going into MOP, very slow going, but also they basically packed the roster, and it was very much, a rotation system on it. And I just thought, well, we'll just sitting people out here, not just simply to give everyone a chance, but we've packed the roster. Too many in the roster. So I eventually left and I went somewhere else, and then that guild collapsed because they just couldn't get numbers. This was a big problem at the time in MOP, where 25-man guilds sometimes struggled to get numbers. Not always, but sometimes struggled, or at least to get quality ones. In fact, I remember during MOP for Throne of Thunder, they introduced Thunder Forge they call it at the time. We now call it Warforge. It's called Thunder Forge then, and they changed it to Warforge in Siege of Orgrimmar. And in order to entice more people to play 25-man, because far more people were playing 10-man, it's easy to organise. Some people liked the coziness of it, 10 people as opposed to 25 and all the rest of it. So what they said is, Blizzard said they've got this plan to encourage people to do 25-man. Their plan seemed to be that you had a better chance of getting Warforged gear. Which, was laughable, really, when they actually revealed what the grand plan was. Because there were various problems with it. I mean, apart from anything else, the end bosses, just as often do now, dropped mounts. On 10-man, it dropped a mount. On 25-man, it dropped 2 mounts. Well, the problem with that is, it was, for 10-man, you're effectively getting 1 mount per 10 people. In 25-man, it's like 2 mounts for 25 people. That's the equivalent of 1 mount for 12.5 people. So it would take you longer to get your mount on doing 25-man, even if you kill the boss at the same time and farmed it for as long. It would take you longer to get the mounts for everyone in the guild, in the 25-man guild, than a 10-man guild. So that wasn't great either. Because, those are the rewards that people actually enjoy. Because, the power rewards, I always say, the power rewards last a few months and then you're gone. Like, I stopped playing the game in Wrath with the best gear in the game. I came back, even though I didn't use that character, I created other characters. But I came back, and that character's gear, all of a sudden, because it was like ICC just opening up, so I'd missed 2 tiers of raids, was complete garbage. Absolute shit. Because I'd been gone for a year. And that's the way it had gone. But anyway, so, blah, blah, blah. And, and I ended up doing, I moved from guild to guild as necessary, as some guilds sort of declined or just didn't make the progress. Some guilds ended up in being very good guilds and some guilds not so good guilds. Legion, of course, had terrible trouble because, it was just so difficult to recruit, particularly as Alliance. And I started as well. I was always wanting to favour PvE realms because I don't like the world PvP in WoW, and then actually at the end of MOP, getting ready for WOD, I had to just concede. Look, you know what? The guilds are on PvP realms, and I had to bite the bullet. There was no decent guilds looking on a PvE realm, none at all. Even Silvermoon. Silvermoon has never been recruiting when I've actually been looking, and. So I ended up joining a PvP realm. Then by the end of WoD, I was even having to go Horde, but then that changed back to Alliance, back to Horde. I might change back to Alliance again. But, you know, the bottom line is raiding itself has changed, but all the way through I've always sort of enjoyed it. It is a nice feeling when you finally kill a raid boss. But I have to say, there's a very different feeling that I get now compared to before. Part of it may be that raiding was a lot newer in the first few years than it is now. And, you know, familiarity breeds contempt. Not that I have contempt for it, I still enjoy it. But, you know, the feeling. But also it could just be quite a lot of the times when I kill a boss now, particularly an end boss, which is the important ones, I just sort of feel relief rather than excitement. Because in the guilds I've tended to be in, we've tended to kill it after we probably should have done. So, whereas I remember killing bosses in the first few years where I felt we killed it at a really good pace. And I didn't want to become more hardcore and really push it either. So, it's a necessary evil of it. But, in terms of what you get from it, you don't get anything extra from it. From the Mythic Raiding. It's a nice thing. It's nice to have that competitive hobby like I've talked about before, but there are others available to me. But some of the downsides that have sort of crept in, I mean, the ones that's always been there, in fact, actually it's lighter now. I could talk about the raiding schedule. Now, like I've already said, in Vanilla I was raiding every night and Sunday afternoons. TBC, it was 5 nights a week. In fact, that in the guild I'm in now, raids 3 nights a week, and it's like 3 hours a night. You can't say fairer than that, 9 hours a week, blimey. But it's still a schedule, and what it means is if you need to do something else on that night, you sort of can't, unless it's have to do. Obviously, emergencies are emergencies. People have emergencies. And also certain things like, for example, at my work, there's a good 5 times a year when I have to do an evening. If that happens to fall on a raid night, and it basically always does, it's almost like my boss knows my raid schedule and plans accordingly. And in fact, next year I think they're all on Wednesdays and Thursdays, which is typical raid nights. So those are gone, but you know about those in advance, and my percentage of attendance would still be really high. But then sometimes you get other things where you just come home and you're just not feeling well and you just want to go to bed, but you can raid, and you're not gonna, you know, go on say at the last minute, sorry, I can't come to the raid, I'm not feeling very well. That's a bit crap. But so there's those sides of things that don't necessarily help, and then that doesn't necessarily help you get better either, because what you really want to do is have a chicken curry and go to bed. You know, and then you can't, or something else with work. So you've got a load of work to do, and you think so you power through it before the raid time. Then you do the raid, and again you sort of burning out a little bit, and it doesn't happen often. You know, so this is like when I'm sort of stacking up the downsides to it. That's actually quite a small thing. It's just, but it is a thing. It's a thing there. And also, if there's something else you want to do that happens on those nights, you can't do it because you schedule those nights. Now, if you're in in Legion, it was really bad because in the guilds I was in, we were just barely getting the cutting edge. So in other words, we were progressing all the way through. Now, what I'd been more used to in previous years was you do your progress and then you've done it and then it's farming it, and your farming gets more efficient so you can do it in small amount of time, get it down to one night, and you have a couple of months of that, nice and chill, get ready for the next tier, and then you start up again there. So there's a nice ebb and flow. But it's not predictable. Even when you get that situation, it's not predictable. You don't know when you're going to clear the raid. You don't know when you're going to be able to knock a night off. So you still can't plan very far ahead for when you need certain things. Even now, for example, when the pre-patch came out, we'd been clearing Antorus in one night on Wednesday, so Thursdays have been free. But didn't happen. That wasn't the situation as soon as the pre-patch came out, because obviously the raid was buggered. So again, and that unpredictability is always there. So there is that aspect to it. And then in Legion, of course, we also had the situation where we had to do some Mythic pluses, and in BFA there's going to be islands and stuff like that. And even though I think the amount of time needed to do these extra things is going to be less in BFA than Legion, because in Legion it took the piss at times, it's still going to be there, and I think there's certainly going to be times when you're going to be wanting to do more of it for whatever reason. And if those times coincide with other dodgy times with work, that's going to mean that I'm going to, you know, get tired more often. And either way, it also means it's going to elbow out other hobbies that I want to do. And I'm now at the point where I keep thinking to myself, there's other things I want to do, as well as WoW. I don't want to stop doing WoW, but they always have to fall away because of WoW, and I want that to stop, really. But that was, getting to the point where, even though I was thinking that, I was still thinking, but I still get a lot from mythic raiding. I still want to do the mythic raiding. Whereas other hobbies I had, you could easily step back. When I did Warhammer, if you came home one night and you were knackered, well, that's what. And even if it was a gaming night, you still went to bed with your curry soup. Curry soup, chicken curry, or chicken soup, or chicken curry soup, or curry soup. Curry soup sounds nice. Is that just curry sauce without the chicken? Maybe. But anyway, you could easily do that. If worse came to worse, if you're overloaded with work, or you came home and you weren't very well, or you just wanted to chill. You just wanted to, someone said, "Oh, this film's coming out. Then do you want to go and watch it?" It wasn't a case of, which it is at the moment, or has been at the moment. Film comes out, and it's like, "Do you want to go and watch the film?" It's like, "No, I'm going to have to wait till Friday or Saturday because it's raid night." Whereas that's not the case otherwise. Because a lot of the stuff you do, the preparation for it, you can do at any time. And it was the same with judo before that, and it was the same with scouts before that. It's the same with everything, whereas World of Warcraft with raiding, it's all the way through. It's pretty much 50, 51 weeks of the year. You sort of usually get Christmas off a bit, maybe not even a full week, depends on the guild. But every week you'll be doing something, even if it's just the farming of it in one day for certain times, which again, you don't know very far in ahead of when you're going to get it down to one night and for how long. So the unpredictability of it, but the consistency of it also means that, you are going to prioritize it over other hobbies. That's the way it goes. And so, yeah, it obliterates the other hobbies. And then what happened? So for me, this is what started the series. It was basically already stacking up. I imagined all these blocks stacking up as downsides, and then the upside, which never really changes at all, because it's the same benefit I get from it. That challenge, which eventually you overcome. The feeling you get from that, the old endorphins, and that's the upside, and that doesn't ever change. And then something that really tipped it over the edge. Now, there's really a couple of things, personal things. So the first one is just work. Next year, I'm going to be teaching something completely different, as well as doing all the other stuff I do. And I don't just teach either. I don't just teach various courses. I'm basically in charge of one of the courses I do, which means I have to produce materials and make sure and coordinate other people teaching it as well. Because, we need that level of coordination for when we get inspected and stuff like that. So that's quite hard. And we've got new people joining the team from September, which I already knew about, and they've no experience of teaching this course either. So there's going to be work there. I already knew about that. But then the fact that I will be teaching something, because basically a couple of people have left in the department next door, and they've not really, although physically they've been replaced with bodies, actual teachers, they don't have the knowledge needed to teach the engineering, basically. So I'm going to be teaching a class of engineering. Not because I'm an engineer, but I do, at least in terms of the units they do, have the knowledge and expertise to be able to teach them. But nonetheless, I've still got to develop the lessons and all the rest of it. And when you have to do that, that's a lot of extra work. And I'll have to refine as the year goes on. I can't just do it all in advance. I'll have to refine it and change it according to how it seems to be working, how it seems to be going. A lot of talking with people who are more experienced at teaching it, which actually we've got one person left. That's the thing. Two people who are experienced basically left. So we've got one experienced person left in the college. So I'm going to have to find times when he's going to be free and I can talk to him and talk. And that just tipped me over the edge, because I thought to myself, it's potentially there's going to be times throughout the year when I just have to go, do you know what? I'm going to have to spend a load of time on this. But I know that there's definitely going to be a lot of work in September, October. In other words, all year time. So it's going to basically either burn me out or make it impossible for me to effectively raid an Aldia anyway, just because of this. So at that point, I just thought, I was already very, very close anyway. I'd already been questioning, because at the start of this series, I was still going to be Mythic raiding. Bear that in mind. And it's changed since. And I was already going to be, it was so close, I was already thinking, any little thing could tip it over now for me to say it's not worth doing the Mythic raiding. Even though I enjoy it, there's lots of other things I also enjoy, and could enjoy as much or more, that I don't get to do anyway. And so yeah, so that basically tips it over the edge. And then there's other things coming up as well later on in the year, which I don't need to mention here because that didn't really affect the decision right now. But it may have been a tipping point later on anyway, say after Uldir. So it could always have been inevitable eventually anyway. So those are the sort of what has basically happened with it and a lot of the downsides to it. There's a lot of downsides, of course, to anything you want to take seriously. If you want to do a hobby seriously and competitively, there's a certain amount of sacrifice needed anyway, because there's a lot of work to put in it. There's a difference between playing a game casually or pursuing a hobby, whatever it happens to be, casually, and doing it in a serious mode for which there's always a certain amount of outlay of time and effort. But it's a very, very harsh mistress with the raiding. It's super harsh. You don't really get much time off. Of course, people go on holiday and stuff like that, but it's my idea of hell. So when I had a partner and had to do these things, absolutely hellish missing out on raiding. Didn't enjoy the holidays at all. So yeah, it's... And since I made this, because there was a fear, because I was holding on for a little bit as well, thinking about it. Because as soon as this work thing happened, I sort of knew at that point, this is going to cause trouble. But I didn't make that decision immediately, because I thought, let's think it through. Because the last thing I need to do is to make this decision and then regret it or decide that after all, maybe I could manage it. But I'm now certain that I won't be able to, effectively. Because remember, in the time I've been raiding, I've also been teaching, and there have been times, I know what it's like when you've got new stuff to do on top of everything else and raids coming out as well. I know what it's like, and it's not good, and it does burn you out. So I'm just going to save myself that, especially as something else may be happening in the new year, which would knock it on the head anyway. But more about that much later on, because that's a may or may not. So there we go. So that's why I've sort of decided against the Mythic raiding. It should give me more time to spend on other hobbies, including, ironically, World of Warcraft content on YouTube. Not in terms of more, but hopefully in terms of better quality, maybe. We'll have to see if I've actually got to learn new skills as well. So I'll leave it there. I don't think there's anything else I need to ramble on about next week. I don't know, though. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the series. If you haven't watched the rest of the series, it's in a playlist together. You could always listen to that when you're a bit bored. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment down below. I do enjoy reading the comments. And until next time, I will see you later.